Welcome to the Computer Hardware and Operating Systems Essentials lecture series. I created these custom lectures based on A+ certification program, but with few enhancements to improve IT technical skills and knowledge. This would be the first lecture of many more lectures that I will be posting to my YouTube channel, and today we will go over what it means to be an IT professional and some basic skills you should have in order to be successful in this field. So the primary objective for this lecture is to introduce you to the world of information technology professionals, provide you with some examples of IT roles, qualities of a good technician, and typical troubleshooting techniques. So we will not cover in depth into how troubleshooting techniques of different methodologies would work today, but we will give you a basic overview of that because we will cover that or those options in a separate video. So let's look at the roles in IT. So you could be a PC repair technician, network administrator, database administrator, server administrator, cable installer, or a structured cable technician. You could be a data analyst, help desk support, programmer. So these are many options that are available to you as an IT person. Keep in mind that in most Western countries, we do not have a single professional designation body. Like for example, if you are an engineer or a geologist, for example, there is a designation body that will tell you whether you will be called an engineer in training, also known as EIT, or you will be called a professional engineer, which is based on that designation body's decisions based on your education and experience. However, us IT professionals do not have such professional bodies in most Western countries. So your job title may say, technician, analyst, developer, administrator, etc. And those could be things like website administrator, web administrator, system analyst. So anything with these type of job titles, you will have something in front attached to it sometimes. For example, it could be like server administrator. You could be a database analyst or database administrator, either or you could be a database developer. So there are many job title comes with it. Because it is not governed by a single professional body, there are some leeways or there are some flexibility on what you call yourself. Like for example, I own a website for almost 15-20 years now, and I call myself a website administrator and an IT analyst because I have the educational background and I have the qualification to call that. However, it is not a type of designation that you would get from a professional body. It's a designation that you call yourself or based on whatever the job that you have. So skills other than IT. So one of the important skills that you should have is the soft skills. This is also known as common skills or core skills. So critical thinking, problem solving, public speaking, professional writing, teamwork, digital literacy, leadership, professional attitude, work ethics, career management, and intercultural fluency are all part of soft skills. These are very important skills that every IT professional should have, regardless of whether you are directly dealing with your user and or customers, or whether you are an intermediary personnel such as an IT manager. So here's an example of a cartoon that I just grabbed out of the Dilbert, the famous Dilbert. So it is copyrighted to them, so I have all the information here. So if you want to go and check it out, go to dilbert.com and you can see these cartoons. And here's a really great example why communication is important. So this lady comes and say, this isn't what I wanted. And the IT guy said, I know. Your communication skills are so poor that I give up trying to understand what you wanted and instead put some random numbers on a spreadsheet. Why don't you just ask me to clarify? And then apparently your listening skills needed work. So this is just a joke, but this demonstrate that communication and soft skills are very important in the IT field and in many other fields as well. Active listening. So as an IT technician or administrator or a developer, whatever you position you hold in the future, it is very important that you listen carefully to your client, customer, your subordinates, and your supervisors. So whether they are your clients, whether they are your customers, or whether your subordinates or supervisors, you need to make sure you actively listen to what they have to say about certain things, because they may be describing a technical issue that may have some other aspects to it, so you need to pay attention to it. So nobody gonna come to you, rarely you're gonna see someone come to you not only with the problem but with the solution. You might have situations like that, but most of the time people will explain the problem with more additional words and flowery sentences, and you need to actively carefully listen to your customers, subordinates, and supervisors so that you have a better understanding about the problem that you are about to solve. You need to make sure you make good eye contact. That shows professionalism. You need to show that you are following the conversation by avoiding the distractions especially. So make sure that you're not on the phone clicking buttons or on your little laptop or computer while somebody trying to explain a complex IT problem that they need your help to resolve, because it's not only unprofessional but also maybe considered as condescending or bad behavior. And you need to clarify any statements by asking related questions whenever you are confused about something that your client or customer or subordinate or supervisor is trying to explain to you. And one of the also a key thing that you should learn to practice is to avoid interrupting the speaking party, because sometimes you are speaking to someone and you may get an idea for the solution and you may want to speak up right away. I do that all the time in the past, but I train myself to not to do that, because that comes out as a very condescending or a poor behavior. And as I mentioned a couple of times before, you need to make sure that you avoid condescending behavior. Especially in Canada, condescending behavior may result in disciplinary actions or even legal actions under the Canadian Human Rights Act and Canada Labour Code. So there are two codes or laws in Canada that may come into play if you have condescending behavior. That include the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Canada Labour Code. And where that basically says that if you are rolling your eyes, for example, when somebody is trying to explain a concept at work, or you are belittling them, or you are trying to make them uncomfortable, that could come up as a serious behavioral problem. So make sure as an IT professional who are dealing with people who don't know much about IT, you don't act condescending, because that could result in disciplinary actions and or even legal actions. And finally, one of the other important thing that you should do as an IT professional is to ask open-ended questions. So to clarify anything that is needed to be clarified, it is really important that you not only may ask some close-ended questions, but it's really important that you ask open-ended questions, that you gather as much information as possible. So let's look at types of questions and statements. So close-ended questions basically result in answers that typically either yes or no, or limited to very few words, because you are asking very narrowed down questions. When that compared to open-ended questions, your client, user, or customer, or your supervisor will explain the situation in detail because your question is open-ended. So for example, in here I put some four questions in here. They are related. Two of them are related to each other these are in pairs. So on the left hand side we have close-ended question, and on the right hand side in orange we have the open-ended version of that question. So for example, if somebody asks you, did you lose the network drive? I'm sure it is a cable disconnected, or I'm sure it is a disconnected cable. So what that basically means is you basically telling your end user or the party that have submitted the ticket that, hey, I think it is a disconnected cable and that's the route I'm going to take to fix this problem. As opposed to an open-ended question would be, you mentioned that you lost the network drive. Can you explain what had happened? So see the difference? In the first question, you basically already narrowed down what's going to be the troubleshooting path. But the other one, it may be a disconnected cable, but you're just asking the end user or the person who filed the ticket, hey, can you tell me something about that? So that basically give you more broad overview of the issue. Here's another question that I have created. So you get disconnected when trying to answer a call. Do you have VM enabled? So that one end with a question, but that is a close-ended question, because that question, the answer is either yes or no, or I don't know. So it could be yes, no, or I don't know, right? Those are the three answers that could possibly come up. So in basically what you're saying, hey, you're trying to answer your cell phone, but your cell phone keep disconnecting. Maybe you have a problem with your voicemail. You already suspect there is something wrong with the voicemail. You are narrowing down. You have already narrowed down the issue into voicemail itself. So basically it is a close-ended question, because the end user either going to say, yes, my voicemail is enabled, no, the voicemail is not enabled, or I don't know. So that's a good valid answer too, I don't know. But as opposed to an open-ended version of that question could be, the ticket reads that you cannot answer calls. What happened when you try to answer the call? So notice that the open-ended questions typically end up with what happened? Can you explain? Can you demonstrate also? Or can you show me what happened? Things like that. So in not only just IT field, but also in the management and other fields, it is always better to ask open-ended questions first, and then maybe go through the close-ended questions if you want to narrow it more down to a specific area or a problem. So it is the recommendation by most IT professionals is to ask open-ended questions, the questions that are on the right-hand side first, and then maybe if it is needed, ask the close-ended questions on the left-hand side type of questions from your end user. This way you'll get a big picture about the IT issue or technical issue your user or the client or your other people in your workplace, your employees are facing before you narrow it down to and going in the wrong path, right? So for example, in the first situation, if you believe it is a disconnected cable that is causing the network drive to lose its connection, you pretty much shut down any other available situations that may be causing the same problem. Maybe your server is out. Maybe there's a problem not with the cable but with the protocol. Maybe your employee is trying to access an FTP server using HTTP. You don't know, or you probably didn't know that. So that's why you always better to pick the open-ended questions over the close-ended questions. Attitude matters. So see every issue is an opportunity to help someone. Be sensitive to other people's cultures, social behaviors, especially in Canada, where we have very multicultural environments. In almost every workplace, you have to be sensitive to other people's cultures and social behaviors. In what is considered as okay in a one culture may not be okay in another culture. So I can give a really good example of this. Sometimes you have to get close to people in order to fix their computers or their equipments and or any other IT devices. And in some cultures, it may consider as rude, unethical, or outright, no big no. Like for example, let's say a female employee, and if you are a male IT guy, that may create some cultural issues in some situations. So be careful and be sensitive about those cultural situations. Take time to listen to the entire problem. So instead of jumping into conclusions or start to dissect the problem right away, take the time to listen to what your client has to say. Please avoid blaming the user and also others. So if you are speaking to the user who filed the ticket, or you are speaking to the supervisor or manager or someone else of that user, please stop blaming. Do not blame the user or to blame the supervisor or others. Even you don't blame your own IT department. Instead, try to solve the problem without blaming or pointing fingers at others. Do your best with every opportunity. So every opportunity that is presented to you to solve an IT technical issue or any other technical issues, take that as an opportunity to do your best. Never assume your client, customer, or supervisor is stupid, incorrect, uneducated, or misinformed. That is a really bad option. So like you may come across your clients that may be like 90 years old. That doesn't mean they are stupid. That doesn't mean they are incorrect or uneducated or misinformed. They may be old, but they may know more about IT than you do. Or they may know about their device specifically, how that device operates and how that device is supposed to behave more than you do. So never assume that your client, supervisor or customer or whoever you are dealing with is below you. That is a bad idea. And at the same time, never assume your client or customer or supervisor or whoever you are dealing with intelligent, always correct, more educated than you are, or highly informed, because that would also going to create issues. An example would be your supervisor, for example, may tell you something and you assume that your supervisor is more educated and intelligent, and that might be the case. But however, even those educated, intelligent people may be wrong sometime. So imagine you are a junior network administrator and your senior network administrator or supervisor tells you that a Cisco switch is down because some kind of a VLAN configuration is incorrect. If you go and check that switch and you don't see anything wrong with those VLANs, don't try to find why that VLAN is incorrect over and over and over, because maybe your supervisor is incorrect. You don't know that. So never assume that your client is stupid or lower than you, or never assume that your client is superior or intelligent than you. Instead, be neutral when dealing with people. Be neutral and think about when dealing with people side of the equation of these issues, that think about from a neutral point of view. The end user, customer, the supervisor or whoever you are dealing with, think about as another person, like a friend. Never think them as superior to you or inferior to you, because you never know whether the information that you are receiving about this IT technical issue or technical issue is the full picture, or it could be some convoluted picture that you need to pick out the correct information to proceed. Okay, so keep that in mind. So never assume someone is smart, never assume someone is not smart. Logical and research skills. So recognize computer terminology. So make sure that you know certain terminologies because those will show up when you try to solve a problem. So once you identify the problem and you're trying to find solutions, when you go and search for those information, you will come across certain computer terminologies and you should know what they are. Like for example, if I tell you what's a TFTP server versus a FTP server, and if you're a server administrator, you should know what those terms means. If you are a network administrator, if I ask you something about or tell you about I have a problem with the DMVPN, you should know what the DMVPN means because it's your job to know that. Speak clearly and concisely to others. So if you have technical information, try to cut down jargon as much as possible, especially when you are trying to solve a problem. Because last thing you want is a convoluted answer given to your superiors or your clients, or your end users, right? Keep that in mind. Make sure you try to keep it as clean, as clear and neat and concise as possible. And stay current in the latest information. So make sure the information that you're obtaining about how to solve a problem is the latest method of solving that problem. Because sometimes, for example, a Microsoft update to the server may have changed the previous method of solving the same problem, right? A update to a VMware virtual machine may completely change the behavior of how that VMware virtual machine is going to react or act with each other. So make sure that you stay current and use the latest information possible to solve your issues. Research information to help solve problems. So that includes knowledge bases, also known as KBs, wikis, technical databases, and honestly, outright anything, anywhere that you can find any information related to your problem. So that could be even a Google search, or going to the customer portal for Red Hat Linux server, for example, or knowledge base from VMware, Microsoft community forums, for example. There are community forums for Red Hat and VMware as well, where your peers and other people post questions and answers, and those can come in handy. Cisco has their own community forum as well. But also, you can use generic websites such as the Wikipedia. Some information on Wikipedia is not valid or correct, but most informations are correct and valid. For example, if you want to know how TCP IP stack is different from the OSI model, you can go to Wikipedia. Most of the time that information is up to date and that is correct. There's nothing wrong with using things like Wikipedia or even personal websites such as Sanuja.com. Like my website Sanuja.com has been used by hundreds of thousands of people over the last 10 plus years, and I write every article in there. And as long as the information is correct on that personal website, even though it is not an authoritative entity, it's fine to use as long as you test it and it works. You can use those methods wherever you find them. So what you need to do, however, whatever you find on the internet or elsewhere, is to use your deductive or inductive reasoning to troubleshoot and repair, and use your scientific reasoning and troubleshooting techniques, which we will discuss in a later lecture, like specific troubleshooting techniques to get to the bottom of the problem. One of the cautions I want to mention here is that, especially when you're using Google and personal websites or forums such as the Microsoft community and VMware knowledge base, sometimes have some community input as well as Cisco community, things like that. Be careful of the information that you get, and just test it out and use your scientific reasoning to make sure that they all work as it is stated on those sites, because those sites are community generated, as opposed to something like Red Hat customer portal that would have very specific information specifically written by the Red Hat creators or developers. So those most likely to have less errors in the procedures and information within there. However, that does not mean that those are 100% right either. So knowledge base databases for Microsoft, the same thing. Those knowledge base databases may have some errors, but most likely won't have many errors as much as a community driven platforms such as the Cisco community and Microsoft community or personal websites. So keep that in mind when you're randomly going to websites on the internet and trying to find solutions to your IT problems. So you need to use descriptive words when you are trying to search something on the internet. So omit certain words such as the, in, at, for, etc. Like instead of saying the DMVPN issues, just type DMVPN not connecting, specific, instead of searching for something like that is very wordy, like that, don't use like huge sentences to search. Use as less words as possible and narrow down what you need to search specifically. Like for example, you could say something like network drive disconnecting. Instead of saying network drive disconnection happens at a random time, or random disconnection is good enough. Instead of saying network drive disconnecting at a random times, that's way too wordy, like for example. So stay simple. So for example, install rather than installing, installed can be used as well. It's okay, but instead of using even installed or installation, just use install. That's good enough. This is just an example, use quotations for exact phrases, such as Google search allow you to use those quotations to narrow that specific term down in their search engine. So for example, if you type Windows 11 with these quotations, what's going to happen is the Google search going to return all the information related to Windows 11. Because it is specifically looking for that term, and that term will get returned first. Or you can use the or for example, dot matrix or impact printer. So you can also have this pipe command as well, and that would allow in Google for you to search that specific these two terms. You can use the minus sign, so memory dash brain. So what that's going to do, actually, this is going to omit anything associated with memory and human brain or animal brains. This is just going to search for the memory that associated with anything other than brain. You can also use and, like for example, computer and memory. What that's going to result in is it's going to be an and function, and basically it's going to search both computer and memory and return the results. You can also include vendors, like for example, Microsoft Windows 11 instead of Windows 11, Cisco DMVPN setup instead of DMVPN setup, etc., etc. So you, instead of saying VPN setup or just general purpose VPN setup, you're going to say Cisco VPN setup, and that would actually give you specific information. So what's important is use available tools to refine your search. So in Google examples, there are a variety of options and filters to narrow down search results that mentioned here above. that's those, such as those quotation, but also the things that I haven't gone into depth. Like for example, if you want to search a specific site on Google, you can use the site command with the site associated with it. In this case, we are searching the https sanuja.com, and it's going to return anything related to that site itself within your search, right? So that's going to do a site specific search. So there are many other options that may be available or added by the Google in the future, and just keep that in mind when you are searching in a search engine such as Google. So IT professionals has to be a jack of all trades. Like all good IT professionals has to be, like must be a jack of all trades, because we would be the first people to call in to many of the issues, not only IT related, sometimes electrical, electronics, microwaves, etc, etc. Like the microwave ovens I'm talking about, like the cooking microwaves. So most of the time the IT professional will be calling to even change a light bulb, right? Because they think you are a jack of all trade, which is a good thing in my opinion, but some of you may find it's a bad thing, because everybody start coming to you for help, right? Especially in a small office environment, that could happen with a small IT departments. So you should be an expert of operating systems. You should be a hardware expert. You should be a software installation and troubleshooting expert. You should be an expert of, as I mentioned, non-IT related, unrelated technical, expert. And you should be, you should be able to communicate your, whatever your technical skills to your end user, as I mentioned before. And you have to be a juggler of time and priority. So you need to prioritize who should get the first go at solving a problem if multiple problems comes at the same time, which is the case in most cases, most situations. And you should be a good problem solver, and really important that you should be able to translate your technical knowledge to your general public community, so like your general public user. So for example, if you have an accounting department and your accountants are having some issues with their printers, you should be able to translate the printer issues to the accountants who may not have any experience in IT. They might have some experience in IT, but not as much as you do, for example. So you need to be careful with that as well. So what's really important here is you have to be a jack of all trades. And just a little story about this. So I heard there was this situation. They have a Wi-Fi access point near a lunchroom, and once in a while the Wi-Fi access point goes out of service, or the connection drops near that area. Well, as an IT technician, you know that the microwaves which we cook food in can interfere with some Wi-Fi signals. So basically now you are playing the electrician, the wireless technician, and the IT professionals at the same time. So you may be able to plug the microwave into a different circuit or different area so that your access point don't get interfered with that the microwave cooking signals, radiation, right? So think that broad overview of things. Like I said, you might be even calling to change a light bulb. It's not your job. In some organizations, large organizations, you should not be doing those things, because if something an accident or something happened to you, that might result in a big issue, because you are not supposed to change light bulbs as an IT technician. But if you're working for a small organization, you might even have to change light bulbs. So keep that in mind as you go into this profession. And that would be the end of this lecture 1, and I will post the future lectures within next few weeks. If you have any questions or concerns related to this custom made computer hardware and operating systems essentials lecture series, you are more than welcome to reach out to me through either leaving a comment or contacting me through sanuja.com. Until next time, good luck and have a nice day.